From Unity Church of Christianity in Houston, Texas, this is The Awakened Life with Reverend Howard Caesar. Unity is a non-denominational Christian church providing a positive, practical, and progressive approach to Christianity. Let's join the service in progress with the Reverend Howard Caesar.
In fact, the records show that 111 million the last 2 years to watch the Super Bowl. It is said also that this is a day in which our nation consumes more food than second only to Thanksgiving in terms of the purchasing and all this, you know. And just to give you a little of an idea, from the National Chicken Council, they tell us that there will be 1.23 billion chicken wings devoured, 100 million pounds of chicken, and there will be 8 million pounds of avocados for guacamole dip. There will be 38 million pounds of popcorn, 2.5 million pounds of nuts, 51.7 million cases of beer. There will be 11.2 million pounds of potato chips, which will account for 27 billion calories and 1.8 billion grams of fat. And I'm told that antacid sales are expected to increase 20% on Monday. But it is interesting, of the 10 most watched programs in U.S. television history, of the 10 most watched in TV history, 9 of them are Super Bowls. Shows you how many sports fans we have, or something. There's something good about that and something wrong with that. But anyway, it got me to thinking, this Super Bowl thing, about the word super, okay? And so, just so we were all on the same page, I thought I would go to the dictionary and tell you what it says there, or what it said to me. And it basically says that super is a prefix meaning over, above, superior to, surpassing, greater than others of its kind, as in supermarket, okay, and other words that have that prefix. So, you know, it kind of makes sense for a Super Bowl because, you know, we know, those of us who are sports fans, there are a whole lot of bowl games that come out around the first of the year. There are colleges and universities and so forth, and they're good and they're interesting, but they're saying that essentially this is over, above, superior to, surpassing any of those bowls. This is the bowl of all bowls, the Super Bowl, all right? Now, that prefix and what it means, you know, I think we all experience and express life in a number of ways and at a number of levels, if you will, a number of states of consciousness. And what emerges from some people is over and above what is that of others. It surpasses some others. Some others have just a consciousness in which they're more radiant, they're more alive, they're more freed up, they've let go of, they're just more attuned to who they are and are expressing it. And so we might call them super in some ways. We refer to some people as super bright. I had this super bright person in my math class. I always listened to her, whatever. There's a super intelligent person, or this super friendly this person is, or they're super nice. And when it comes to athletes, we say they're a super athlete, or they're a superstar. And there are also people that we might call just overall, we just like them so much. We may even, and I referred to other people as that person's just a super person. You're going to really love them, super person. Wouldn't you all like to be called a super person? Yes? Okay, maybe you have been, okay. So, in other words, it's a standout. There's something that causes you to be above and beyond and surpass. And anyway, there's an individual that has been kind of in the news as we're talking about football and football players. And one of our own Houston Texans football players, his name is J.J. Watt. And he's just a young guy, and he is just shown amazing talents in his first 2 years with the Texans. And he's really a superstar. He's perfected his game and risen above the others, surpassed many. And he just received, basically last night, the Defensive Player of the Year award, which is no small thing in the National Football League. And yeah, it's all right. Applaud JJ, because he's a super guy, you know, super person. And he's had amazing statistics as a player, but we've also learned about him that he is just a super person, not just a super player, he's a super person. He's from Wisconsin. Drank a lot of milk out of those dairy cows and cheese and whatever, I don't know. But so many things have come out about his life off the field. And what a great example he is, what a sweetheart guy, big heart, just a good person. And there's a number of stories. And actually there was an article written in the Houston Chronicle this week in the sports section by Jerome Solomon about him as, you know, having been a player had a historic season statistically, and he's already considered among the all-time great Texans players after 2 years. But they also got into talking about what an incredible person he is, a super person, really, off the field, and that the Texans' offices are often ringing with people calling in, telling them about stories about J.J. Watt. And that basically he makes random stops in many instances without making any announcement where he's going, and not having, you know, make an announcement to the media to follow him along to get photo shots and publicity photos and all that. But he will spontaneously just drop in on police stations, fire stations, children's hospitals, various places where his heart is called to just go say hello and just kind of lift people's spirits, and he just has that about him. Now, some of you may have heard about a video that I guess I'm told went viral, and it was a video about a little girl that is only 6 years old and a fan of his, and her name is Brianna, and she is on the video crying, wanting to be older than 6. Because she's not old enough to marry her favorite player, J.J. Watt. Okay? And so somehow this got into the hands of J.J. Watt, that there was this video, and he saw the video, and I'm told he spent a couple days trying to find the family, and finally did, and invited the family to Reliant Stadium, and where they surprised little 6-year-old Brianna with J.J. Watt doing a down-on-one-knee proposal to this little girl to be Mrs. J.J. Watt for a day. And he had bought flowers, and he had a ring for her, and I mean, you know, that's not too cool to give her a ring and take it back one day, but anyway, he had a white Texans jersey as like her wedding dress, and they even, at the end, whatever happened there, it was a wedding dance with her to a tune from Justin Bieber. So is this guy cool or what, huh? Yeah, he is. All right, we love him. But one other thing I want to tell you about him that was shared actually in the article that was about him. He had somehow learned about a family that had a tragic car accident, and it was the Berry family, and that accident had happened actually back in July of 2011. And 3 children, the 3 kids, Peter, Aaron, and Willa, actually were seriously injured in the accident, and both parents' lives were lost. So they lost their parents as well as being injured. And so he developed a close relationship with them, I guess at the hospital and visiting them. And he continues to stay in touch with these kids, and they text back and forth messages. And so various times you see him texting, and then oftentimes it may be these 3 kids. And he also, from time to time, goes by to see them and hang out with them and stuff. And this is a guy that has a lot of demands on his life and has other charitable endeavors. And he's a super guy. Is he a super guy? He really is. And it's like a great example and model of somebody who's not always thinking of themselves, but how can I lift someone else's spirit? And we all have that super quality in us. You know, the team respects him enormously. He works so hard, you know, he never lets up, and he's a disciplined guy and always giving everything, and he motivates the players around him by the way that he shows up. And he's been gifted with a large big, strong body to be able to play football, but that took the discipline, to be conditioned, and also just the way he is. He has a disciplined mind to do these super things, because it's his character. It's who he is inside. It's his inner life that really comes to a level of greatness. And what I want to do is I bring that up to say, when we talk about somebody like that, it's like that lives in all of us. That lives in all of us. There's something super, something great, something wonderful, something that is of God, that dwells within us, that wants to reach out and embrace and feel its connection to all others in a wonderful way. I was coming across, there are people that have done and accomplished super feats of various kinds. And sometimes they are very unique and wonderful. Sometimes they're almost odd. But it's as if to show to themselves a level that surpasses what others somehow are not always able to do. And so I just want to tell you about a few that I came across. One was about an Iceman. He's called the Iceman, actually. He's a Dutch adventurer, and his name is Wim Hof. And in 2007, he was able to survive 72 minutes outdoors at the North Pole while wearing nothing but his shorts, BVDs. My wife actually almost froze in that moment when I told her about that. But he says that he was able to control his body temperature by using tantric practice, which is practiced by yogic monks in Tibet, and involves the practice of actually focusing on the body's energies and turning them into heat. That was something that he had learned to come to discipline himself within. I want to tell you another unique lady. This is a 76-year-old, the strongest grandma in the world, she is said to be. She's from Russia, and she, as a 76-year-old, can lift a 52-pound dumbbell over her head. She can break horseshoes. She can twist 2-inch steel rods, 76 years old. And she first discovered her strength when she was 10 years old, after she was able to move a 661-pound container of grain. I mean, what kid's playing around somewhere moves 661-pound container of grain? But anyway, then there's a guy named, and this is kind of odd, this is John Evans. He's called the Balancer, and he's balanced all kinds of things on his head, with his hands free. And everything from boats to washing machines to a mini car. And he holds the record for holding a mini car for 33 seconds, hands free. And he credits that to a strong neck, which has a width of 24 inches. So just a couple more of these. But anyway, there's some of them that you've heard where a person has actually bent steel or lifted a car. There's actually a documented one in 2008. There was a guy named Chris Hickman. He was a fireman, and he came to the scene of a car crash in which this was in Florida. A Chevrolet Blazer had flipped over and landed on its side, and it pinned the arm of the driver under the car between the vehicle and the pavement. And so Hickman arrived, and he actually came and he lifted the SUV about 12 inches and from the ground, and it allowed the other firemen to pull the guy free. And this is all documented in in an article. And so we've heard stories like that where a person has suddenly the adrenaline moves and they just want to help somebody. And so there's some provision within us that is almost of a super quality, that our makeup, physiologically even, is able to achieve things that are just sometimes beyond imagination. There was in 2006, a guy from Los Angeles, Dean Karnazes, and what he did was he ran 50 marathons in 50 different US states, and get this, in 50 consecutive days. All right, the wear and tear on your body to do that. And so 50 marathons in 50 different states in 50 consecutive days, beginning with the Lewis and Clark Marathon in St. Louis and ending with the New York City Marathon on November 5th of 2006. Interestingly enough, he also, this guy, ran 130 miles nonstop across Death Valley in the Mojave Desert in temperatures reaching 120 degrees. Why do people do those things? Why do they climb the mountain? Because it's there, I guess, right? Last one to tell you is this is a guy named Roy Cleveland, and he is unique in that he was struck by lightning 7 times over the course of from the time he was age 30 to the time that he was age 65. He survived all of them, and the reason that he was struck so many times is actually that he was a park ranger in a national park in Virginia, and it happened to be at a location where they have about 45, as many as 45 thunderstorm days per year. And so about every 5 years, I guess, he got lit up with this lightning. For some reason, you know, he didn't learn. It's just weird. But he died in 1983 at the age of 71 from a gunshot wound. Anyway, the point of all these stories is really, in all seriousness, is to grasp that there is something super that is moving through people and through us in various ways that enables them to, you know, to lift a car, to twist steel rods at age 76, to run 50 consecutive marathons in 50 days, or survive 7 strikes of lightning. It's amazing, some of the things, and there are many, many other stories, others you can think of, others that you heard, others that you've read, even people, maybe you have your own story to share. And somehow we have to realize that there is something amazing that is accessible to us that we call God. You know, Jesus was able to demonstrate super feats and feeding 5,000, you know, walking on water, healing the sick, raising the dead, all of these things. There are super forces that we can draw upon that originate with a superpower, and that superpower is God. And for us to just reflect on that, what it is that you and I actually have that is moving through us at all times, and that can be expanded in what it can do and what it can accomplish. Let us never underestimate that. You see, that one presence and that one power that is in and throughout the universe and in and throughout the cosmos is in you and in me. It dwells within us. There's something sacred about awakening to that and having a deep realization of the magnitude of what lives within me and the power of it, and the power of its love, the power of its strength, the power of its goodness. To just be with that at various times is a very powerful and profound thing. I think everything super begins with a deep knowing of that. When the super of you, the super person that wants to come out and be expressed, it begins with really knowing that you have a super something that dwells within you that wants to be given expression. And you have the conviction that there's something more to you than a standalone being. There is something that is moving through you, and that there's very sacred and powerful and mighty. And the more we can be quiet and be with that and realize that, can be profound moments that were taken into a deep, deep place. You know, all through the Old Testament, the prophets' role and goal was actually to convey the power and the magnitude of this one God, and to not let the people of Israel forget that. And they would drift away, and then the prophet would come in and try and bring them back again, because there's always the pull and the tug of the externals in life, and the physical and form and what have you. And so it was basically to say, above all others, you know, superior to all others, surpassing all others, this God is the one and only God. And that was the work of the prophets. And basically, you know, here we are on a Super Bowl Sunday, and there is actually an equivalent Super Bowl story in the Bible. It really is. It's one of my favorite stories, and it basically is found in 1 Kings chapter 18, and it is a Super Bowl, like it's a contest. And it's a contest between the one true God of Elijah and the God of Baal, which had to do with all these plural gods and externals and so forth. And so it was this contest between the one true God and the false gods. And just a little bit of history about that. Ahab was the king of Israel at that time. And this was about 874 BC, before Christ. And Ahab, as king, had fallen in love with Jezebel. And Jezebel was not the best thing for Ahab, because Jezebel was a strong Canaanite woman who was a worshiper of Baal. And so they married, and they ruled together. And when Ahab married Jezebel, they had a prenuptial agreement. And the prenuptial agreement was that he would allow her to continue to worship Baal. And so along with Jezebel came 450 prophets of Baal. And so all of this began to intermingle with the consciousness of the Hebrew people and the Israelite people. And it began to factor in. And so it appears that Jezebel kind of wore the pants in the family too, because she kind of got her way. And this was kind of growing. And this idolatry and false gods, which represent basically, for us metaphysically, false ideas and false beliefs that take us away from the truth of who we are, okay? And that's the equivalent of it. So what happened was Elijah, who was the prophet of God, called for a meeting with Ahab, the king. And he says to Ahab, you know, you've forsaken the teachings of the Lord, and you have allowed, you know, the teachings of Baal to come in here and take people away from the truth. And so he challenged Ahab to a showdown, to a contest, and between the god of Baal and the gods of Baal and his one God. It was sort of the Superbowl was on. He agreed. And so they decided, here are the rules. The rules are that each of us will build an altar, and you can gather your 450 prophets of Baal, and I will serve as one prophet of the one God up against you all. And we will prepare an altar of wood, and we will sacrifice a bull and put the pieces of that bull on that altar, but there will be no fire, no fire. And what will happen is you will call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of my Lord God, and the God that answers with fire is the winner. He is God. He is Lord. He is the one God. Okay? So you follow this, Superbowl? Okay. So King Ahab agreed to the challenge. What he did was he called together all the people of Israel. You know, he was pretty sure he was going to win. And he called together the 450 prophets of Baal. And there they gathered on Mount Carmel. It wasn't New Orleans. And so Elijah kicked off to Ahab. And what it meant was really Ahab went on the offensive first. He built his altar and he called on his God. He created the altar of wood, put the pieces, the sacrifice there, began to call on him, you know, and he called from morning until noon. No answer. Called louder. No answer. Began to dance around the altar and the 450 prophets of Baal. No answer. And it was then that Elijah almost drew a personal foul penalty. You see, because he began to taunt and mock them. And so here's Elijah saying, cry louder. Is your Baal either meditating, or is he busy, or is he maybe away on a trip, or is he sleeping and he has to be wakened? So he was saying all these things. But they continued to cry to Baal, no response, no answer, nothing. Then it became Elijah's turn. And what Elijah did was he told all the people to come in close, gather closer. And he took 12 stones and built an altar with 12 stones symbolizing the 12 tribes of Israel that had followed the one God. And then he put the wood on that. And then he put the sacrifice of the bull that had been cut up on top of that. And then what he did was he dug a trench around this entire altar that he had created. And then he asked for 4 water pots of water, 4 water pots of water, and they brought them and poured them on the altar, poured them on the wood, poured them on the sacrifice bull, the whole thing, and it was dripping. He says, not enough. He asked us for a second load. 4 more pots of water were brought, okay, and poured over this sacrifice, the whole altar. It's getting saturated. Still not enough. A third time, 4 more water pots of water is poured on. And by this time, it's just dripping, it's saturated, the trench is filled up with water now, and it's as if to say, I want to show you how good my God is. You get this story? You with me? Okay. And so he then calls upon God, and he says it in a prayer. And he says, hear me, O Lord, hear me, that this people may know that you are the Lord God and that you have turned their hearts back to you again. And so along came the fire. And the fire came and it consumed, this is in this passage, it consumed the bull, it consumed the wood, it consumed the dust, it licked up the water that had been in the trench. Whew. And the people saw it and they fell on their faces and they said, the Lord, He is God. He is God. Very dramatic, very powerful. Elijah had done his job. God had answered. And it's a dramatic story because what it's conveying, and it's there, is very important, and that is never, ever underestimate the ability of your God. All right? The God that is the one true God, never underestimate. Let there be no doubt that all things are possible with your God. Okay? And your God will help you. He will be there to overcome, to win. Don't give your power away. Don't shut Him down. Don't turn your back. Don't go to false gods, limiting ideas and beliefs. He is your God. He's there for you, and He will take you far. So that's the teaching, really. And in metaphysics, there's a term called superconsciousness. Superconsciousness, and really it's just synonymous with Christ consciousness. Something we're all called toward. And so when we begin to live the super consciousness, the Christ mind, is begin to incorporate through prayer, through meditation, through being in the silence, through speaking the word of truth, through that transformation, we really make of life a Super Bowl, our own Super Bowl. So whereby we bring in an awareness of the presence and power of a God that we can call upon no matter what it is that we face. Every day can be our Super Bowl in the sense that we get to be victors over whatever it is that may be placed against us in the field of play. Okay? Life is a Super Bowl, and God should always be winning in your heart. And that's what Elijah would say. That's what he wanted them to know. That's what they came to know. And Jesus came right in behind it and said, it's about loving the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. And that's the way it is. God bless you all.
Thank you for joining us for today's message. We invite you to be with us again next Sunday. At Unity, we believe that God's presence of love and goodness is everywhere, and that life is meant to be good. You can find out more about Unity and our teachings at unityhouston.org.